This is the most important law and power that I want you to engrave in your brain right now as you listen to me. Everybody has insecurities and has an ego. And the worst thing you can do for your boss, for your colleagues, for the people underneath you is to violate their ego, to make them feel insecure. You will pay a price for it. They will resent you. They will work against you. They will betray you in the end. So never lose sight that everybody around you has an ego and has insecurities. You know, a lot of power is thinking ahead, 2 or 3 moves ahead. And in order to think several moves in advance, you know what your intentions are. You know where you're going to go in 6 months, right? And so you have to have a vision of where you're headed, but you have to keep everybody else in the dark so that they can't predict what's happening next. So part of concealing intentions, part of business, part of power is the ability to think strategically, to think in advance, to think several moves in advance. And that means having intentions, having moves that you've planned out, but you want to keep other people on their heels. They don't know where you're going to go next. When you make other people think about what's going on in your head, you're the one in control of the situation. Whereas if they know everything that you're thinking, everything that you're doing, then they have power. They have power over you. It's an aura of power. You know, business is very matter of fact, but it's also pure psychology, right? You've got to understand the psychology behind power. Power is about appearances, and there's weakness, things that show weakness that people can kind of feed off of you. They smell it. Then there are powerful things. And you want to create this aura of power, even though inside you might not feel so powerful or feel so comfortable or secure. But outwardly, you want to show this appearance that makes people think, wow, this guy, he's authority. I respect him. Talking less creates an aura of power. It makes you look larger than you actually are. It makes you make people think he's mysterious. He or she is mysterious. If you can't control your own mouth, if you can't control that, then what can you control? You can't control your emotions. You can't control your behavior. It signals weakness and insecurity. Whereas talking less, you're not going to say something stupid. And then when you do speak, it's going to carry a lot of weight. It's actually extremely important to understand the psychology of what gives the appearance, the aura of power, and what doesn't. Baseline of every human being, we're all actors. Some are good actors, some act more, some are bad actors. Being an actor is part of human nature. It's deeply, deeply ingrained in all of us because we're a social animal. If you went around just speaking everything that you thought, you would offend everyone around you. So get over this notion that we can all just hang out and just be who we are. You're never being who you are. You're always acting to some degree. In business or politics, whatever. It would be somebody who could change with the times, who they rose to power based on a strength. They see that it's not quite the right quality and they adapt and they move with the times. He compared it to a river, right? And you're kind of moving like the water. You're flowing with this river, and that's power. But being rigid and having a form and having a strategy that you always rely on and having a personality that you always exude to the world and perform as is weak because you can't adapt. To change yourself, to become fluid, to be something different, means you have to let go of the past. You have to let go of your ego. So that's a very important quality. Don't think of power as these are these set laws that I have to follow. It's got to be this way. It's got to be A or B or C. Open your mind up. But if you're too stuck, if you're too always the same, people are going to be bored with you. So the game in 2025 and moving forward has a lot to do with attention. But attention is money. Attention is something that you can monetize, right? In order to gain people's attention, people get very bored, right? They get very bored very quickly if you're always the same, if you always have one note. You have to know the game of absence and presence. Sometimes you have to be absent and sometimes you have to be present. You have to understand that the person above you has an ego and has probably a bigger ego than you do, obviously, because they're powerful. But with an ego comes insecurities, okay? So you must be aware that the person above you has insecurities and probably has more than you do, because they're constantly worried. Do people still like me? Am I still doing as well? Am I as popular as I was a year ago? Am I getting as much attention as I deserve? Am I doing a good job? He or she is very insecure. They're thinking about these things all of the time. So what happens is, if you try too eagerly to impress them and you do such a good job on some project or something, and then all the attention accrues to you for doing that, then you're going to trigger their insecurities. Wow, this person's getting the attention and not me. Maybe they're after my job. Maybe they're more popular than I am. They're not going to consciously think this because they don't want to admit that they're insecure, but unconsciously they're worried about you. They're thinking things that maybe you're a threat, right? And slowly they're going to build up kind of resentment towards you. And what will happen is you'll probably be fired or you'll be demoted. You have to do a good job. You have to try really hard. You have to do the best that you can, but you got to let the person above you take some of the credit, take some of the glory. Otherwise, they're going to be wondering about you. They're going to be thinking that you think that you're better than them, and you're going to trigger their insecurities. Everybody has insecurities and has an ego. And the worst thing you can do for your boss, for your colleagues, for the people underneath you, is to violate their ego, to make them feel insecure. You will pay a price for it. They will resent you. They will work against you. They will betray you in the end. So never lose sight that everybody around you has an ego and has insecurities. If you play the game of power right, you read the book, you understand it, you will be rewarded at the end of the game, right? You will be rewarded. It's always better to pay people and pay them well for their services. A powerful person feels confident in their wealth, feels confident in their resources, feel confident in the time that they have. And so they give that generously to other people. Being tight with your money, not wanting to pay your employees well, is a terrible, terrible quality, and it will bite you in the end. So I always tell you, maybe you don't give them credit for everything. Maybe you keep them a little bit on their toes, but you pay them well, right? You treat them well. They feel comfortable. They have food. They have an apartment. They have living expenses, okay? And you don't want to make them feel insecure about that. So being cheap with your money is very, very dangerous. It's a signal of weakness, okay? Well, the single most important skill to master is to be more focused outwardly. So a problem that you have is you're always inside yourself. You're always thinking about your needs, your emotions, your problems, things that have happened to you. Do people like me? Am I getting enough attention? That's a deadly, deadly attitude to have in business or in any venture in life. We're a social animal. So you might think that analytics and algorithms and data is what's going to drive your company. That's certainly a part of it, but the social aspect is equally, if not more important. So you need to be continually laser focused outwardly on the world, on the trends, on what other people are thinking. You have to become a master observer of the social game, being able to read other people's psychology, being able to read and understand the trends that are going on in the world, where the world is going in 5 years. You need to think of your 20s, which is by far the best years of your life. Let's get that straight first. It's most exciting. You know, you're young, you look good, you got energy, you know, you dress well, probably, I hope. The thing that you want from your 20s is you want an apprenticeship, right? You want to learn. You want learning skills. You want to learn skills, solid skills, so that by the time you turn 30, which is the critical turning point in your life, when you're 30, you want to go, I had fun, I had adventures, I traveled, you know, I dated, I did everything I wanted, but I also learned things. I learned A, B, and C skills. You don't have to learn just one skill. You can learn 3 skills, 3 things that you master, that you spent 7 years going into deeply. But if you wasted your 20s, if you just had fun, if you just did whatever you wanted to. By the time you hit 30, nothing will stick together. Nothing will cohere. You've been stretched too thin. But if you're linear, laser focused, I'm just going to go to Goldman Sachs. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get paid $150,000 a year. You're not spreading yourself out. You're not learning enough skills. You're not developing yourself inwardly. A skill is a skill, but learning is a skill. And in order to learn, you have to be able to put up with boredom, frustration, and tedium. You're too single-minded and you're 23, you know exactly what you want. You won't have adventures. You won't have that freedom, that fluidity to learn different things, okay? So I would say generally around the age of 30, in your 30s, is when everything should start coming together. Now, things can go up and down. They can have a trajectory. Your career is never going to be straight up. If it's straight up, you're in trouble. Your failures, if you're bold and you try things and it fails, you've learned lessons. Don't let it sink you. Let it be a lesson for your next project and have another iteration and go in a slightly different direction. Seduction is a bit of psychology. It's a strategy. What ties all seductions together is people are resistant to you. Nobody is naturally open to another stranger, right? Seduction is getting those walls down, getting to crumble, getting to lower down to a point where they are going to maybe do what you want, where they're interested in your project, where they're interested in following, where they want to be involved with you in some way. It's the art of bringing all of their defenses down. And if you do it too directly, if you hit them with the hard sell, the walls just go back up because we're all wary of people who will give us the hard sell. What I mean by the sublime is, I like to compare it to a circle. And that circle is what we're all supposed to think and do. It's kind of a limiting factor where in our particular culture, these are the thoughts that you have. These are the behaviors that you do. These are the values that you have. This is the things that you conform to, right? And outside that circle is everything that you're not supposed to do, everything you're not supposed to think, everything that's different, that's strange, that's weird, that's not normal. That is the sublime. And I'm trying to lure you outside of the circle in these 12 different directions to experience something beyond your normal limits, beyond your normal boundaries, that's going to shake your brain up and make you realize that the world you thought was this way is actually this way. You don't know what reality is. You have this image, but things are much stranger, much weirder, much more sublime and awesome than you imagine. The world is mysterious and beautiful for being mysterious. Death is sort of the ultimate limit that we all face. But to be able to experience it, to understand what may lie on the other side, what it is the ultimate sublime experience, right? Because we don't know. Nobody knows what happens to us after we die. Yeah, we think we just decay, we just die in the ground. But people have these called near-death experiences. They're very strange, they're very weird. What happens to our consciousness as we die? So my philosophy in life, if I had to say I have one philosophy, it's called amor fati, which is Latin for love of fate. And what that means is everything happens for a reason. Even the bad things that happen to you have a purpose to them if you know how to handle it. If you embrace the bad stuff that happens to you, nothing can ever hurt you or harm you. You learn from every bad experience. It made me stronger. It made me tougher. It made me more resilient. It made me learn. Everything is a learning experience. Nothing is wasted if you have this philosophy. Nothing is just meaningless. Everything has a purpose behind it. And so all the bad stuff that happened to me when I was in my 20s, all the feelings I had of being lost, they ended up having a purpose because I used it that way.